And this war could continue 1,000 years because the Russians are not coming, the Americans are not coming, because they're terrified that there will be dead people, dead Americans, and this is the moment when the United States reached the post-heroic syndrome. President Trump is politically afraid. The Russians are post-heroic because Putin invaded Ukraine without one Russian soldier. Xi Jinping will not make a war because post-heroic. He is not optimistic about China. All societies that don't have children are post-heroic.
So could you tell me which country in the world right now is not post-heroic?
The Israelis are not post-heroic and they do not have post-heroic family because
文藝春秋プラス編集長の村井源です。今回のプラス論点テーマはイラン戦争、米中接近、ルトワック氏からの日本への警告です。ということで今日は特別なゲストをお招きしております。アメリカの戦略国際問題研究所 CSIS の上級顧問で政治学者のエドワード・ルトワックさんです。よろしくお願いします。
お願いします。
はい。
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. ルトワックさんはですね、これまで文春新書よりも数々の本を出されています。中国4点で暴発する中華帝国ですとか、戦争にチャンスを与えよなどこういった作品がありますけれども、その優れた国際情勢の分析で知られた方でいらっしゃいます。今日はですね、通訳としては文藝春秋プラスでもおなじみでいらっしゃいますけれども、地政学者の奥山真司さんにもお越しいただいております。奥山さんよろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。
限られた時間のためですね、奥山さんと一緒に英語でインタビューをしてまいりたいと思いますので、引き続きよろしくお願いいたします。ではまず今の国際情勢といえばイランの話から伺いたいというふうに思います。率直に伺いますけれども、この2月末から始まったアメリカとイスラエルによるイランの攻撃、ルトワックさんはどのように見ておられたんでしょうか。
Iran is like Berlin in 1945. Hitler is dead. They can never win a war, but in the meantime, the SS controls the city. Until the Russian troops arrived, the SS controlled Berlin, and anybody who wanted to stop fighting German, they killed him. That's the situation. Revolutionary Guards controlled Tehran. Any normal Iranian who wants to stop fighting, they kill him. And this war could continue 1,000 years because the Russians are not coming, the Americans are not coming, because they're terrified that there will be dead people, dead Americans, and this is the moment when the United States reached the post-heroic syndrome, when Americans are afraid of casualties. President Trump is politically afraid because Israel lost 1,500 dead soldiers. Nothing happens in Israel. But the United States, if he loses 150, it's a problem. If he loses 1,000, he gets impeached. He is no longer president.
So is there any way for the United States and Israel for way out for this
conflict? There is a way out if the allies, European allies, and Japan send minesweepers into the Gulf, open the Gulf, and Iran can cook. The Iranian regime can cook. Who cares if you open and the oil flows? Nobody cares what happens in Iran. That's the solution. They have to send ships.
Okay. You mentioned about the post-heroic warfare. One of your main kind of core idea about the situation in this world right now.
Well,
how are you going to explain it? Could you explain it? And then could you apply to the Japan?
Suddenly, the will to fight has collapsed. Not for political reasons, not ideological reasons, but because of family structure, which is that Europeans were used to fighting wars every 30 years. Every time they fought, many people died, but there were many more children. After the war, the soldiers come back, women want soldiers, soldiers want women, and so Europe population increased from war to war, even though people died. Now it stopped, this machinery. They are not getting married, they're not making children, and families do not have 3 boys. They have maybe 0 boys or 1 boy, and the willingness to fight is gone. So Europe is full of soldiers. NATO has more soldiers than China, more soldiers than Russia. But they're willing to wear uniform and to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner in uniform, salute, go, etc., but they're not willing to fight.
これ日本の少子高齢化ってもう抗いようがないような状況になっている中で、これ日本として現実的にどういうようなことをしていけばいいのかっていうところです。
Japan doesn't have any more many children, and we have a very small number of children.
Japan is the same as Europe, except that in Europe they don't fight, the population doesn't want to fight, and the army doesn't want to fight. In Japan, the population doesn't want to fight, but the self-defense forces are like the British forces, different, that they are willing to fight. The ground self-defense forces are totally willing to fight. But the general Japanese population is post-heroic. They are not, because they're a different culture.
So what is, so could you tell me which country in the world right now is not post-heroic?
Well, the Russians are post-heroic because Putin invaded Ukraine without 1 Russian soldier. He invaded with mercenaries, with foreigners, Koreans, etc. So they are post-heroic. They're as the same. And everywhere in Europe they're post-heroic. The Israelis are not post-heroic, and they do not have post-heroic family, because in Israel, a university-educated woman who is a professional, like a doctor or a lawyer, has 3.5 children. In Israel, fertility treatment is free. Raising children doesn't cost anything. Plus, people love children as a children's society. So they have 3.5 children per woman, or 3.1 or something like that, and they can fight the war, lose 1,500. Okay? 1,500 for Israel would be like 60,000 for America, because it's ratio of population. And Americans would totally not fight for any reason at all. You have the phenomenon, like England and in Japan, the armed forces are willing to fight. And I saw that. I was here during the tsunami, and when they sent the Japanese forces to help in Kasanuma and when they had equipment, special equipment, helicopters, I don't know what, they used it. When they didn't, they just went into the water and lifted people and put them on their shoulders. In other words, the Japanese armed forces are not post-heroic. They're willing to fight. But all over Europe, the armies are not willing to fight. They're not willing to fight. They're willing to be paid, willing to eat, wear uniforms, salute, But if you send them to fight, they refuse.
What happened to the post-heroic military or society gonna cause to the world politics?
Well, it's going to mean that, for example, a country like Iran, which has the same low number of children, Iranian fertility is very low, because Iranian women don't want to make babies for such a government, for such a regime. So they don't have the children. But the rulers, the Revolutionary Guards, have a religion, which is Shia religion, which they're worshipping martyrdom. They're saying to them, oh, life here is not so good. The moment you die, if you attack the enemy, you will go upstairs to heaven with 72 virgins. That's what they tell them. And you know what? They believe them. So they have a martyr cult. A martyr is not sad. A martyr is happy. And they celebrate the martyrdom. When Khamenei was killed, people said, oh, how wonderful, now he's like a martyr, he's there in heaven with God. They actually believed that. They believe it so much that during the Iran-Iraq war, they sent children to explode mines in the minefields. Not 10, not 20, but 200,000. So if imagine a death cult, a martyr cult country with nuclear weapons. That's why President Trump should receive the support of everybody for stopping the nuclear weapons, and they don't support it. They think that it's the same as France having nuclear weapons, England nuclear weapons. It's not. They are actually believe in death. They say so. They say the martyr is somebody who lives a bad life here for beautiful life up there. They believe that. So if they have nuclear weapons, they can give beautiful life to everybody.
Coming back to the post-heroic society or idea about post-heroic war, is that beginning in the US right now?
It just started. It started because when the war began, this war, the United States sent airborne troops, army troops and Marines to the area to occupy the islands in the Persian Gulf and the territory to open the Gulf. But when the bombing started, the troops were not put in the islands, and they did not get permission to go into action because the White House was afraid that if they start dying, there will be huge. Trump could be impeached, could be removed. Half the people in the Trump administration are against fighting. Outside the Trump administration, the Democrats want him to fail. So Trump's risk was that he sends the troops, let's say a few hundred die, and he gets impeached right out of the White House.
これ人口減少の話と、ちょっとよりもこっちの方が深刻だって話だと思いますが、中国とか、東アジアの国は全体的に出生率低下に、が課題だと思うんですが、他の日本以外の東アジアの国のこのポストヒロイック問題、このあたりっていうのはどう見るべきですか？
Well, a very important implication is just like Russia has an aggressive leader, but is completely post-heroic, so he could not send Russians to fight. Young Russians could fight. And in China, it's the same. Because the Chinese did not fight a war, like a 3-year war, but they did fight, for example, June 2020, in northwest India, Ladakh. The Chinese were entering, the Indians stopped them, and then 33 or 32 Indians died, and the army gave the bodies to their families, the funerals and so on. The Chinese dead, complete silence for 8 months, silence. Then after 8 months, they announced we lost 4 soldiers. And then each soldier had already been the subject of a personality cult. They built memorials already for them. They moved the families to beautiful houses. The one was an officer, the wife was a piano teacher. By the time they made the announcement, after 8 months of silence, working, presenting her, she already had become music professor at the Academy of Science and some, of Arts, Cia Academy. So the Chinese reacted to 4 dead as if it was 4,000. Why? Because the same post-heroic thing. No Chinese family has 3 boys. No Chinese family has 2 boys. They either have 0 boy or 1 boy. So every boy who died was the only child of 4 grandparents. And so I believe that the Chinese are terrified. The Chinese authorities, who were silent for 8 months and compelled the families to pretend that time had not existed, because then they had funerals. And the families had to cry and cry as if they had died yesterday. So all of this theater is because the regime cannot afford to have lost. If you kill 1,000 Chinese, if there is a Taiwan thing, and 4,000 or 5,000 Chinese sailors die, the regime might collapse. So they are very post-heroic, as you would expect, because they have no children. All societies that don't have children are post-heroic.
じゃあちょっと次のテーマに行ってもよろしいでしょうか。
Next.
これまさにルトワックさんの専門の話と近いことが今日本でも議論になってまして、まさに高市政権がですね、国家情報会議というものを設置して、これは衆議院でその法案成立したということなんですよね。これってルトワックさんどう見ているか、ここお願いします。
So I hope that every one of them has lived in foreign countries and knows a language or two. Because otherwise they'll be like the CIA. And the CIA was established in 1947, and it has failed in every war. Afghanistan and all the wars, they failed. Why? Because they do not know foreign languages. Now, the State Department, like Guy Musho, has people who know foreign countries and speak foreign languages. The CIA people live in Virginia. Once in a while, they go abroad. They don't know languages. They don't know cultures. The Ministry of Police is the same here, of course. But this is very extreme because, for example, when Osama bin Laden started being dangerous, the CIA set up a special Osama bin Laden bureau. Osama bin Laden communicated by making speeches and videos. The head of the bureau did not know Arabic. He was the head for 3 or 4 years. He didn't try to learn Arabic. His superiors didn't force him to leave and put somebody else. He himself appointed a deputy whom he liked, who did not know Arabic. So his job was to find Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden does not have airports, military bases. You cannot photograph him. You can only hear him and then see videos. And he did not look at the videos because he doesn't know Arabic. And the CIA was so degenerated, was such a degraded organization, that they appointed him, he could not do his job, and they kept him there. And the result was September 11. The result was the towers in New York, because he completely failed, totally failed. And so an organization that appoints somebody who doesn't know Arabic to follow a target that speaks, that you can't photograph him from satellites, he doesn't have airports and bases and ships, is a degenerated organization. But this is just a long history of failure. The only thing the CIA are very good at is public relations. You know, in Hollywood, they tell people make movies, so it's like CIA. When you ask them to do something, they never do it. So this is what happens when you have... Now, the mistake was that in 1947, when the post-war American system was established, the Secretary of State, Dean Acheson, said, it's our fault, Secretary of State. We made the biggest mistake. We let them go, the intelligence, because we didn't want to deal with them because they're not gentlemen. We were stupid. So the result is our people know languages, our people study languages, these people don't know languages, and they don't understand foreign countries, and the result was Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. All of these are intelligence failures. So setting up an independent organization is fine, so long as every person has served abroad and speaks at least one language, foreign language, maybe better two, and then you have a useful organization. If they consist of bureaucrats who don't even speak, French, English, Russian, Chinese, not even those simple languages, then it will fail just like CIA failed.
How are you going to train this intelligence officer if you were in charge?
There is only one way of training intelligence officers correctly, which is bring them in, do not give them any training until they show that they are talent for intelligence. And you do simple things, like take them all to Bangkok, tell them that they have to take a picture in front of a famous pagoda and send the picture by email to the controller, except they don't have iPhone. They have to approach somebody, a tourist or somebody, persuade them to take a picture, and then persuade them to email the picture to the controller. If they don't pass this test, out. Then if they pass the test, test number 2. For example, they put you on a late night bus, and they have to persuade the bus driver to make a small deviation by telling him that it's very hard to walk, and you have to persuade them to deviate from the route and drop them off in front of the house. That's test number 2. And then after they are shown that they can communicate with foreign people, understand foreign people, persuade foreign people, then you start training. Useless to train them if they don't have talent and, of course, languages. Useless, because they have no sensitivity.
So you mentioned that when you train the intelligence officer, you have to, the officers has to know the cultures and songs and poetry. Could you elaborate?
Right, okay. In the United States, there are many, many Americans who are very interested in foreign countries. So they go abroad and they study abroad, they stay abroad a year or 2 or something like that. They make many friends, they maybe have boyfriends, girlfriends and so on. When they come home, if they want to work for CIA does not take them because they say, we don't know what you did abroad. And we need to we need to investigate what you did every single day, who you met, what is their name, and where do they live. Now, of course, young man goes around, he doesn't stop people, and before talking to a girl, ask, give me your passport, photocopy, and all that stuff. Therefore, the CIA excludes the very people who are talented and could be trained into intelligence officers. That's how they start. That is how you end up on the road to have the Osama bin Laden unit run by a person who doesn't know Arabic and who appoints a deputy who doesn't know Arabic. And the fact that his superiors at the time allowed this to happen means that the entire organization is rotten. Rotten, because Osama bin Laden could not be photographed with satellites. He didn't have bases, armies, ships. He only had his voice. And he spoke in a very peculiar, rather elegant Arabic. And when he was trying to send signals, he would switch to dialects. Like, for example, before attacking the American ship, he was using Yemeni expressions. And now he was signaling to his people, I'm going to do something in Yemen. But the Hansen, or whatever his name was, I forget his name, he did not hear the signal because the idiot didn't know any Arabic, and his superiors who appoint somebody to such a job without knowing Arabic. So when you have an independent Japanese agency, the people, everybody there has to have international experience. Because if they don't, they're useless. And I mean everybody, including the receptionist. Because otherwise, somebody calls you from Thailand saying, you know, I like Japanese people, I don't like Chinese people. And I overheard in a restaurant, 2 Chinese, because I know Chinese, they were talking and blah, blah, blah. The receptionist had to take the call. Okay? Take the call. If you send an email to Mossad, they don't know who the hell you are, and you say, I'm in Tokyo. And I was walking down the Ginza, and I saw there were 3 Arabs talking all the time about boom, boom, Tel Aviv. Boom, boom, Tel Aviv. The receptionist will immediately pick you up, talk to you, and somebody will come and talk to you. Maybe they fly you to Tel Aviv. But an organization has to be responsive. We have such organization in America, not CIA, of course. But we have the Security and Exchange Commission, which is the one that investigates people that don't cheat and fraud. And the biggest ever scandal started when somebody called from Caracas saying, I'm just working here as a stockbroker. There's a guy sitting next to me who is a complete idiot. But every time he buys a share, the share goes up. Every time. He's an idiot. It means that somebody knows inside trading, inside knowledge. That's the receptionist. He didn't talk to the boss or investigate. He talked to the woman who answers the phone. The woman who answered the phone immediately understood that this is serious and said, please wait, and called somebody from the Security and Exchange Commission who talked to him for, 7 minutes. After 7 minutes, he said, you have to come to New York. I'll send you a ticket. Come here immediately. And that is how they discovered that somebody from Curacao had secret information, which he got from somebody in New York, who got it from the head of this whole organization, Milliken organization, and that's how they arrested first the little one, then the medium one, then the big one, and that was the biggest single financial scandal in American history because the receptionist answered to this guy. Instead of saying, the guy was speaking with a Spanish accent, instead of saying, well, write a letter or something. No, she listened, and then she called somebody who takes the phone. Then that person followed it. So an organization has to be effective, not 3 or 4 people at the top.
テーマを切り替えて、5月の14日、15日に米中の首脳会談がありまして、その時にいろいろな話があったと思います。台湾のことも話し合われたというふうに、報じられていますけれども、この間の米中首脳会談については、ルトワックさんはどう見ているか、ここをお願いします。
I am not a sinologist. I started traveling in China in 1976. I was actually invited to the Mao funeral. And I went to China many times, but I'm lazy, and I refuse to learn Chinese characters and read Chinese. So I'm not a sinologist. I've just been to China many times. I was the first person to go to Tibet, Mongolia, Xinjiang. I'm just a traveler, okay? However, I have seen the evolution of China, which did not go straight. It went up, then it went down, because China was becoming more and more relaxed. It was still Communist Party, but they were more and more liberal, more and more freedom, and so on. And then with the freedom came, of course, some corruption, naturally. So Xi Jinping arrives and says, I will end the corruption, which he did to a certain extent. Ending the corruption, he ended the freedom. The Chinese rulers were becoming more and more human. When there was the earthquake in Sichuan, how do you say Sichuan in Japanese? Yeah. They went, Wen Jiabao, the prime minister, they went and sat next to the families and so on. They didn't stand there speaking to them the way Xi Jinping does. Today, Xi Jinping speaks. The members of the Politburo Standing Committee, the top people, are sitting, they film them that they're writing notes. Like teacher Xi Jinping, and even the top are just children who write notes. It was not so under the previous Hu Jintao, I don't know how you call him in Japanese. It was more and more collective leadership. So China has been going backwards. Not going forward, but going back. And Trump, when he meets with Xi Jinping, he's not meeting a statesman who is thinking about the future. He's meeting somebody who is desperately wants to maintain the communist government and who is persuaded that if they open at all, the whole thing will collapse. In other words, he is not optimistic about China. He believes that China is in grave danger. I mean, the regime is in grave danger of collapsing. And therefore, he is very tense and closed and frightened. Trump meets him and he brings American optimism. You know, the Americans say, look, it's a sunny day. Maybe we have problems. Tomorrow is better. You know, we're going to have growth and so on. So it's a meeting between two people who do not speak the same language. Interpreters are not enough. Suyaku, not enough. And so one says one thing, one says the other. But Xi Jinping will not make a war because post-heroic. You know, he visualizes as a war, and of course China wins, and they conquer Taiwan. After all, the Taiwanese are also Chinese, so they don't fight. However, there's, you know, many ships involved, and 3 or 4 ships sink. You know, there are submarines. We don't know if they're Japanese submarines, American submarines, whatever. They sink. 4,000 people die, and China goes into shock. Because for 4 people, they were paralyzed for 8 months while doing all these preparations and changes. You know, they did so many things, including the officer who died. When he died, his wife was pregnant. And so what they did was a beautiful film of him with his baby. Now, he was dead, and so they created artificial pictures. And so, in other words, people who take 8 months to deal with 4 dead cannot deal with 4,000 dead. And I believe that Xi Jinping threatens and doesn't fight. But understanding, no. Cooperating, no. And everything that Trump wanted from him was to buy soya beans. Because soya bean farmers are Trump supporters. But if Trump prevents them from selling soya beans, then they won't like it. And China imports 190 million tons of soybeans. It's the biggest traffic on the ocean. Other than iron ore and oil is soybeans, including Canadians, Australians, you know, Americans, Canadians, Argentina, Brazil. So Trump wants him to buy soybeans. That's it.
ルトワックさんのその独自の概念としての大国自閉症という言葉があると思います。これ中国がまさにそれに陥っているというようなお話をされていたかなと思います。この大国自閉症について教えてもらってもいいですか?
This idea is a very simple idea, geographic idea. If you go to Amsterdam, which is a small country, taxi driver speaks German, French, English, and Dutch, 4 languages. Once you go in a big country, taxi driver only speaks his language. So same thing with power understanding. The bigger the country, the less they understand the outside world. The bigger the country, the more action there is in the country. And the politician, the political leader, has to deal with problems. Let's say in China, he has to deal. In Japan, you say you have to deal with Kyushu problems, Honshu problems, Hokkaido problems, and whatever. Osaka, you're in Tokyo, you have to deal with Osaka. Osaka has different politics and so on. How much time do you have to understand Patagonia or Brazil or Nicaragua? Very little time, and even America, you don't have enough time. American politics is complicated. Federal politics, national politics, it changes every 17 minutes. It is different in Florida, completely different than New York. The mayor of Miami is one, the mayor of etc. Very complicated. And therefore, the bigger the country, the less time they have to deal with foreign countries. And this is a simple phenomenon of autism. They're like autistic children. They look like they don't understand, they cannot communicate. They don't really understand.
Is the China fell into that category?
Oh, completely. Absolutely. China is, if Mr. Xi Jinping gives you his job to you, you'll find that every single day you have to deal with an earthquake here, a flood there, a collapse there, an agricultural problem in this other place, industrial problem there, and then there are continuing problems. Like, for example, Northeast China, which in Chinese called Dongbei. Northeast is always a problem. And so he has to deal with Northeast because they have a long-term economic crisis. Because, they're cut off. They don't have a port. They don't have a port because they never built a railway of 20 kilometers through Russian territory to have a port, because the Russians don't let them, because Xi Jinping and Putin kiss each other, but not allow them to be there. If Russia and China were normal countries, the Northeast would have 3 ports on the Pacific through Russian territory, of course. And the Russians would be happy to operate the ports. So when they pretend to be friends, ask them, how come you didn't allow Northeast China to access the Pacific, which any other country would do, but not them.
じゃあ最後にルトワックさん、ぜひこれ日本へのぜひメッセージ提言をお聞かせいただきたいなというふうに思います。いろいろな動く国際情勢の中で、特に対中国なども含めて今の日本結構難しい局面に置かれているかなというふうに思いますが、日本が取るべき戦略はどういうものだと思いますか？
I don't have anything very interesting to say. I can say some boring things, which are very boring because everybody says and nobody does it. Number one, if I was the Prime Minister, the first thing I would do would be free fertility treatments. Number one, fertility treatment is free. You must understand that the difference between free treatment and not free treatment is not a question of money. The difference is that if it's free, the woman goes and gets the treatment and becomes pregnant. If there is money involved, the fertility doctor does not give her the right solution until she spent money. Then that fails. Oh my God, it didn't fail. Let's try number 2. Send more money, and only then he will give her the right treatment. That's why in Israel, where it's free, fertility treatment is 3 days or 4 days, a week or 2 weeks. In New York, where it's very expensive, fertility treatment is months. And there are good days, optimistic, maybe I'm pregnant, maybe I'm not. They make films about this. They have plays about this. What happens, when the moment is free, with today's technology, woman walks in, next day she's pregnant. So the first thing I would do, free fertility treatment. Second, of course, is the question of child care. You can be an educated woman, you can be a professional woman, you can be an engineer woman, because you have a child and we provide high quality free child care. These are the first things I do. Now, if you answer to me, you tell me, I'm sorry, but I'm the politician and I cannot pay for free child care because I'm actually short of money, because we have so many old people in Japan. So I have to pay so much money for old people that I don't have money for children. In that case, my answer to you is it means that you are not practicing policy for Japan. You are practicing a policy for the death of Japan. Because if there are no children, there is no Japan. Unless you want to import population. You know, bring in people from Africa and Asia, I don't know what, so if you love Japan and Japanese culture, which I believe many Japanese love Japanese culture, and by the way, many foreigners love Japanese culture. If you want to preserve it, you have to have children. The government has to procure children. Modern governments have to grow their own taxpayers. You have to raise your own taxpayers. And you have to spend money for it. And that should be priority number 1. Priority number 1. And in my opinion, it's a matter of the future of Japan.
岡山さんから最後質問ありますか？締めの。
Number 1, birth rate improvement. How about the defense policy should be?
Okay, defense policy. First of all, Japan is still island. I do not see D-Day, a kind of amphibious invasion. So the threat is that they attack Taiwan and make Japan insecure by showing that they can take Taiwan and the Americans do nothing. That weakens Japan. That's number 1. Number 2 is the possibility that in a post-heroic world, there are big dangers for Japan. Big dangers. For example, let's assume that there is an accident on the Korean DMZ between South Korea and North Korea. I don't mean incident. Incident means fighting. No, accident. A truck turns over, and 28 American soldiers fall from a truck deep down, and they die. At that point, many Americans will discover a secret. And the secret is that the American troops are in the front line in Korea. Why? Let's say, why did this accident happen? Because they're on a mountain road on the border of North Korea. Why are we there? How come? I didn't know that American soldiers are standing right in front of the North Koreans. And that could be a huge problem. So they decide to withdraw the troops. People start complaining, they withdraw them from the front line. Now, the moment that happens, the South Koreans begin to think of a nuclear weapon. So that moment, it becomes a problem for Japan. Because Japan is facing Korea, right? And there are only 4 possible situations: divided Korea or united Korea. United Korea is grave danger for Japan. Secondly, nuclear or non-nuclear. Right now, North is nuclear, South is not nuclear. If South becomes nuclear, that is a problem for Japan. So, of all the 4 possible Koreas, the best one is divided and South without nuclear weapons. To get to that situation, you must maintain stability. But that stability depends on American support. And if there is this accident and the soldiers die, and Americans discover that American soldiers are on the front line, which they don't know. They don't know. Most people don't know that Americans are patrolling the front line. They could say, withdraw them. I mean, after all, that's what happened in 1977, when Jimmy Carter decided to withdraw all the American troops. He did not withdraw all of them, only half of them, because public opinion, experts walk up and started shouting in Washington. Now they wouldn't shout. Now they wouldn't shout if they withdraw forces from Korea. But for Japan, it'd be a big problem.
ありがとうございます。ということで、今回の特別なゲストをお越しいただきましたエドワード・ルトワックさんと、そして岡山真司さんお二人でした。どうもありがとうございました。
Thank you very much.